Picture a quiet suburb straddling the Tennessee-Mississippi line where the air is steeped in the hum of cicadas and the scent of fried chicken, and that very comfort-laden aroma detonates a family's fragile peace. 66-year-old Marianne Ellis, the widowed wife of a railroad man, announces at Sunday dinner that she's signing the house over to her younger son. One short sentence shatters the family like a brittle pecan shell, flinging each member into a private emotional freefall. Yet, while resentment ferments like sweet tea under Memphis's sweltering sun, a far more predatory force arrives. Officials decide to run a high-speed bypass straight through the Ellis home, garden, and memories. Old hairline cracks widen into battle lines, pitting multi-million-dollar budgets against a humble plot crowned by a fig tree tied with a ribbon of hope. Dear friends, your comments and support mean the world to us. Tell us, what challenges have you faced in life or maybe you're facing right now? Like this video and right where you are watching us from, we will be happy to send you our regards. So stay with us, don't miss what's coming next. Sunday dawn crept into Marianne Ellis's narrow kitchen like a barefoot child afraid to wake the grown-ups. The blinds were half-angled, letting in slivers of Tennessee sun that painted gold bars across flour-dusted counters. 66 years had bowed Marianne's back, but not her resolve. Her hands moved with the silent tempo of someone who had repeated the same ritual enough times to do it blindfolded, in thunderstorms or in grief. Chicken thighs hissed in the iron skillet, the oil snapping tiny sparks that leapt and died in an instant, while sweet potato pies cooled on the windowsill beside a jar of pickled okra that caught the morning light like stained glass. She'd only ever cooked this full, indulgent spread on birthdays, baptisms, and the day her late husband finally retired from the Illinois Central line. That was why the scent itself carried a secret Morse code, and Olivia Ellis decoded it the moment she stepped out of Franklin's car. She tugged her blazer closed against a breeze too warm for September, narrowed her eyes at the house, and inhaled twice just to be sure. Marianne watched through the lace curtain and felt a pang. Olivia's suspicion had a point even before the doorbell rang. Franklin always joked that his wife could smell disappointment before it happened. The trouble today was that disappointment might come wearing a stranger's smile. Dwayne arrived next, engine rattling like it held loose prayers under the hood. His teenage twins tumbled out, bickering about wireless reception and baseball cleats. Marianne raised a hand in greeting, the way a lighthouse does to ships that never quite dock. She understood teenage boredom. It had once lived in Franklin's eyes, too. Yet she could not resist meeting it head-on, offering second helpings before first plates were empty, bribing attention with extra syrup over biscuits. She called them all to the table at 1:30. A wave of heat followed the platter of chicken, cinnamon brown and glistening, while the scent of nutmeg drifted from the pies as though the kitchen itself meant to confess. Marianne kept her own confession tucked behind her ribs, letting the rhythm of serving spoons and napkin unfolding lull the room into easy chatter. She'd rehearse these opening minutes in her head, ask about Dwayne's new supervisor, laugh at Olivia's story about the church raffle gone wrong, ruffle the twins' hair when they claimed the school cafeteria now served extruded mystery protein. 'Twas of it was scaffolding for a single sentence heavy enough to tilt the day off its axis. During grace, she listened to Franklin mumble the blessing. He had inherited his father's gravel-warm voice, but never quite his patience, and wondered whether the Lord, if he planned a rescue, would signal by cooling the chicken or dimming the sunlight. No such miracle arrived. Instead, as forks clinked and conversation edged close to comfort, Marianne cleared her throat through the hush. What she said next would linger longer than even the sweetest pie could mask. "Before we dig into dessert," she began, folding her napkin with deliberate care, "I have a small matter to share." It was not small, and the choice of words made Olivia's brows jump like pulled strings. Franklin set his fork down, the quiet clatter too loud in the charged stillness. Dwayne's twins froze mid-eye roll as if the tone of their grandmother's voice had reached some primal chord children always hear. Marianne explained succinctly, formally, that she had signed paperwork transferring the modest Memphis house they now sat inside to Dwayne, and additionally, the 2-acre plot with the half-collapsed barn outside Brinkley, Arkansas. Dwayne drives out every other weekend to patch what the storms peel back, she said, looking straight at Franklin but seeing past him to the ghosts of her husband's calloused hands. It felt fitting. 5 seconds of silence hung like a curtain between lightning and thunder. In that gap, Olivia's pulse thudded so loudly she feared someone might comment on it. The house smelled suddenly of grease gone cold. She remembered nailing shingles onto that barn roof with Franklin one sweltering July, remembered the heavy hammer blistering her palms, remembered teasing him that sweat equity must count for something. Now those memories tasted like tin. Franklin exhaled first. Mom, what's yours has always been yours. He managed a polite nod. Church picnic diplomacy. But behind his eyes a calculation flickered. Acreage meant inheritance. And inheritance touched nerves no apology could numb. Olivia watched him try to swallow pride and bewilderment at once, and for the first time suspected he might choke on the mixture. Dwayne shifted, clearing his throat as though wanting permission to celebrate, yet sensing any grin would brand him Judas. I'm honored, he said, and truly he was, but even honor can seat itself awkwardly at a table built for 4 when it notices the wood warping. The twins lowered their gaze to the mashed potatoes, pretending fascination with gravy patterns. Conversation resumed in staccato, brittle bursts. Franklin asked about weather. Olivia complimented the crust on the chicken she suddenly found too salty. Marianne poured iced tea that no one reached for, the pitcher sweating ringed circles onto the tablecloth. Beneath the cotton fabric, her hands shook once, unseen. She recalled her husband's funeral, the distant train whistle that had broken her composure then. Today, no whistle arrived to carry blame down the tracks. Responsibility settled squarely on her shoulders, heavier than the cast-iron skillet cooling by the stove. When dessert plates were cleared, Olivia excused herself to the bathroom, but instead stood in the dim hallway, tracing a finger along family photographs. Each frame caught a smile different from the muted ones at the dining table. Shadows quivered behind her, though no draft stirred. She realized the house itself had listened, walls absorbing every unfinished sentence, and somewhere deep inside those walls a crack widened, quiet now, dangerous later. The following Monday, Memphis rolled into late summer with a heat that made asphalt shimmer like hot tarps. Olivia skipped the weekly dinner invitation, claiming a migraine she partly invented. She sat on the porch swing of their midtown duplex, counting the ways resentment rooted itself, first as confusion, then hurt, then a restless ache that kept her up watching ceiling fan blades turn 1,000 revolutions past sane bedtime. Franklin returned from work smelling of copy paper and stale coffee, asking whether she planned to thaw the leftovers Marianne insisted they take home. She told him to eat whatever he wanted. He ate cereal. Eventually, Franklin proposed they let time smooth things. Olivia noted how men trusted chronology the way children trusted nightlights. Simple devices to keep monsters at bay without ever naming them. She kept silent. Yet every unspoken word scrawled neon across her thoughts. You helped nail that roof. You planted marigolds along her fence when her arthritis flared. You spent 4th of July scraping burnt ribs off her grill while Dwayne's twins played video games inside. None of it had counted. Weeks passed in brittle harmony. Olivia's blood pressure spiked. Medication bottles dotted the nightstand like tiny white flags. She woke one dawn to the smell of toast burning and felt panic flood her chest until she realized Franklin had simply forgotten the timer. In the charred edge of bread, she saw a metaphor too on the nose to ignore. Then, a late September call jolted everything. Dwayne announced he would list the Arkansas property within 48 hours. A promotion in Nashville demanded relocation and fast cash for housing near the new office. Olivia watched the color drain from Franklin's face. The theoretical loss solidified into something he could no longer deflect with stoicism. He paced. fingers worrying the seam of his trousers, whispering that maybe he should have fought harder. Maybe he had misread his mother's intentions. Maybe the roof they'd fixed together should have meant something beyond tar and shingles. His voice cracked on that last maybe, and Olivia realized she'd been waiting for this fracture, the moment her own hurt would finally register in him as legitimate. They sat up late, long after cicadas fell silent, talking with raw honesty that scraped old scabs. By 2 a.m., they had plotted a future neither had imagined. A tiny fixer-upper in Clarksdale, Mississippi, cheap enough to afford but decrepit enough to demand every skill Franklin once relegated to weekend chores. The idea tasted risky and exhilarating, like leaning over a high balcony just to feel wind slap your face. They would paint walls themselves, strip floorboards, plant vegetables nobody could deed away. Olivia fell asleep on the couch, head on Franklin's shoulder, believing, perhaps foolishly, that autonomy could bloom from loss. The property closed mid-October under a sky the color of tarnished copper. As keys met palm, Olivia felt a tremor of ownership course through her veins. She pictured Thanksgiving dinners in a kitchen that still smelled of dust and mildew, yet would soon carry new codes of cinnamon and sage no outsider could breach. 3 days later, the phone rang again. Dwayne sounded worn, words limping. Their mother had moved into his downtown one-bedroom to avoid lonely nights by the Arkansas highway, but concrete walls stifled her, and the absence of soil under her nails made her hands twitch in sleep. He wondered, would they let her visit the new house even briefly? She kept to herself these days, seemed smaller. Forgot to eat breakfast without birdsong to remind her dawn had broken. Olivia stared at the half-painted porch rail, the color uneven where she'd run out of primer. Franklin waited, lips parted in tentative hope. Somewhere inside her, the old wound pulsed, but farther beneath it, something gentler stirred, like river silt settling after a storm. She said yes, though the word felt tender as fresh scar tissue. The invitation flew down the phone line, and with it a fragile possibility that some cracks, once widened, might still be bridged if everyone balanced carefully on the planks. Olivia never forgot the sound her own footfalls made the first time she stepped into the Clarksdale house alone at night, hollow, almost shy, as though the floorboards were taking her measure. The property sat at the curled end of a gravel lane shrouded by pecan trees that dropped their husks with soft, ominous thuds. Inside, plaster peeled in seams, exposing lath that reminded her of rib cages. Yet the air smelled of rain-damp earth and faint honeysuckle, and that fragrance coaxed her forward, promising renewal if she dared shoulder the work. Franklin had driven back to Memphis to close out a client audit, leaving Olivia with a thermos of coffee, a folding chair, and sworn vows to install the deadbolt before midnight. The plan was simple. Finish caulking the kitchen windows so Dawn's chill wouldn't bully its way in, then paint a first coat on the hallway so she could surprise him with progress. But projects rarely obeyed the dreams that birthed them. She perched the radio on a paint-stained step stool, searching the dial for blues that might stitch comfort through the empty rooms. Static rose and fell until a warm guitar lick finally cut through, the singer crooning about a love that crawled away like smoke. Olivia hummed along, brush steady in her grip. This, she thought, is the sound of ownership. No mother-in-law's secrets, no notary's stamp deciding my worth. Each stroke of primer felt like sealing a wound. By 11, a clap of thunder shuddered across the roof. Another followed, deeper. Rain slapped the windows, then the power flickered twice before going black. Olivia froze, brush midair, heart pounding in the sudden hush. Outside, wind rattled a loose shutter. Inside, darkness settled like a curtain, erasing contours she had only begun to learn. She fumbled for her phone and tapped the flashlight icon. The narrow beam quivered, illuminating a wet primer that gleamed like bone. Some instinct older than reason urged her toward the porch, where the circuit breaker crouched behind warped paneling. She edged down the hallway, phone light bobbing, when a strong metallic clang echoed from the backyard, too deliberate for wind. Olivia's spine prickled. She halted, listening. Through the cracked bathroom window came the unmistakable crunch of boots on gravel. The neighborhood was sparsely occupied, the next house a good 100 yards away. Who would be out in this storm? Another clatter, this time nearer. Olivia clutched the paintbrush as though its wooden handle could morph into something sharper. She flicked off her light, letting darkness swallow her. Rain hammered the tin roof, masking subtler sounds. In that heavy blackness she felt rather than saw the hallway lengthen, every breath of the old house tightening around her ribs. The intruder, if one existed, now owned the element of surprise. Olivia cursed herself for staying alone. A soft creak whispered from the porch boards. She raised the brush like a dagger, absurd but necessary. Lightning flashed, slicing the foyer in silver. A silhouette loomed behind the screen door, broad-shouldered, hood dripping. Before Olivia could cry out, the figure pressed a palm to the mesh and spoke her name in a voice swallowed by storm. It was Mary Ann. The door screeched as Olivia flung it open. Rain sheeted off Mary Ann's coat. Her cheeks were colorless, eyes raw as if she'd been crying for miles. She swayed, clutching a plastic grocery sack. "The bus broke down," she gasped. "I walked. I couldn't stay another night without air." The grocery sack tore. Seed packets spilled, okra, collards, tomatoes, whispering against the wet boards. Olivia's pulse hammered with leftover fear, morphing into anger that unsettled her. Why had Mary Ann traveled 30 miles unannounced in a storm to the very house she'd never seen? Still, she guided the older woman inside, draping a spare painter's tarp around her shoulders. With the power dead, candles became planets in the gloom, their flames bending each time thunder rolled. Mary Ann's gaze traveled the half-painted hall. "I ruined your evening," she said, voice hoarse. Olivia didn't answer right away. Questions buzzed in her mind, but compassion pushed them aside. She boiled water on the camping stove, poured tea into chipped enamel mugs. Mary Ann wrapped cold fingers around hers and whispered something Olivia barely heard. "I'm so tired of small rooms." Those words cracked the air the way lightning had, revealing far more damage than Olivia had suspected. They talked into the storm's deepest hour. The older woman admitted the downtown apartment's walls felt like a train tunnel with no exit light. She confessed she had walked past the Clarksdale post office earlier that day, reading the community bulletin board and imagining what it would be like to belong somewhere again. Olivia listened, torn between the sting of betrayal still lodged in her chest and the raw vulnerability unraveling before her. And while they spoke, neither noticed the rain creeping under the back door, pooling along fresh baseboards. Another trouble swelling in the dark. Morning arrived gray and tentative, as though unsure it was welcome. Power returned with a grumble, and lights blinked awake across the living room, revealing the water on the floor, thin but spreading, a secret river glinting under the sofa. Olivia groaned. Warped timber was a homeowner's nightmare. Mary Ann knelt, rolling her slippers through the puddle, eyes wide with guilt. Together they dragged towels from a box and spread them like desperate bandages. Franklin phoned at 9, his voice bright until he heard the overnight news. "Why didn't you call me?" he asked. Olivia pictured him in his downtown office, tie knotted too tight, safe in fluorescent predictability. "Because you were 3 counties away," she answered, though it sounded cold even to her ears. She told him they were fine. She left out the part where fear had dulled into an uneasy truce, not just with the storm, but with Mary Ann herself. Mary Ann insisted on staying to help patch the damage. She moved room to room with surprising vigor, wiping walls, wringing towels, whispering apologies each time she found new seepage. At one point, she paused over a warped photo frame Olivia had brought from the Memphis duplex, a snapshot of Franklin and Olivia on their wedding day, confetti frozen midair. Mary Ann touched the glass, then set it face down as if the captured joy stung. Mid-afternoon, Dwayne's number flashed on Olivia's phone. His greeting was rushed. "Mom isn't answering," he said. "I think she's with you?" Olivia inhaled, her throat tightening. She handed Mary Ann the phone without comment. A terse exchange followed, Dwayne's voice sharp, his worry quickly shading into anger as he realized his mother had disappeared during a thunderstorm. Mary Ann's tone remained calm, almost resigned. She told him she needed air, needed soil under her nails. She said she would return in a day or two. Olivia couldn't hear Dwayne's reply, but she saw Mary Ann's shoulders stiffen the way people do when lightning strikes clothes yet spares them. After the call, Marianne stepped onto the porch, seed packets in hand. She knelt by the muddy front flower bed, a sad tangle of weeds that had survived foreclosure, and pressed a fingertip into black soil, testing its give. Olivia watched from the doorway. The vision struck her. This woman lost her garden, her husband, the very architecture of routine, and grasped at seeds as though they were rosary beads. Grievances, however justified, suddenly felt like heavy winter coats on a too-warm day. Franklin arrived at dusk, headlights sweeping across the yard like search beacons. He embraced Olivia first, longer than usual, then turned to his mother. Their exchange was awkward, a careful choreography of half-smiles and withheld disappointments. Over supper, they discussed patching the porch roof, replacing moldy insulation, but every practical topic circled back to a single unspoken question. What are we building? This house? Or something larger between us? Later, Franklin carried Marianne's overnight bag to the guest room. Olivia lingered by the pantry, hand resting on a can of peaches, listening to mother and son's muffled voices. Franklin asked why she hadn't told him she was suffocating downtown. Marianne said she didn't want to burden him. Her voice cracked on the word burden, and Olivia felt tears she hadn't predicted prick her own eyes. In that moment, she knew the conflict was no longer simply about a deed or a parcel of land. It was about belonging, the primal terror of being unmoored, the lengths people travel to anchor themselves even in the wrong harbors. As night deepened, Olivia stepped outside. Clouds had blown east, leaving a sky raw with stars. She traced the outlines of their fixer-upper, its sagging gutter, its chipped porch rail, and wondered if it could ever become large enough to house forgiveness. Behind her, the seed packets lay on the porch table, damp but intact. She picked them up, studying the printed promise of summer okra, the tiny illustration of emerald pods bursting under sun. The seeds would need patience, water, and a trust in seasons repeating. She wasn't sure she possessed any of those things, yet felt oddly ready to try. By the third morning, Marianne's presence had rewoven the house into a kind of fragile harmony. She rose at dawn, brewing chicory coffee the way her husband once liked it. Franklin tackled the submerged insulation while Olivia repainted the storm-stained hallway. Work created a rhythm safer than conversation, but conversation inevitably crept in. They lunched on pimento cheese sandwiches, paint-speckled fingers leaving goofy fingerprints on the bread. It was Franklin who ventured into dangerous territory first, asking his mother what she would do if Dwayne sold the Arkansas property after all. Marianne's gaze slid to the window, beyond which lay a field of untamed grass shimmering in sun. "Maybe that barn was never ours to keep," she said. "I thought leaving it to him honored your father's sweat. But sweat dries, and memories grow faces you barely recognize." Olivia heard in those words a kind of surrender, but also the faintest call for rescue. That afternoon, a maroon SUV kicked dust up the lane. Dwayne, frantic, stepping out before the engine fully stopped. His gaze snapped from the house to the porch, fixing on Marianne in gardening gloves. "You scared me half to death," he growled. He wasn't wrong. The sudden image of highway patrols finding their mother on a dark road had hunted him all night, but fear came dressed in accusation, and accusation sowed sparks. Franklin moved between them, voice low, telling Dwayne to calm down. For a moment, Olivia saw echoes of boyhood scuffles in their stance, both men bristling, neither willing to blink first. Marianne spoke quietly, asking Dwayne to walk with her to the backyard. She wanted to show him the fig tree struggling by the fence line, its limbs heavy but unpruned, in need of someone to believe fruit might still come. Olivia watched them disappear among waist-high weeds, their silhouettes melding with sunlight. She sensed the real confrontation had only just begun, not about deeds or barns, but about the debt they owed each other in years of silence. She slipped inside, heart pounding, resisting the urge to eavesdrop. Instead, she washed paint trays at the mudroom sink, the trickle of water too gentle to drown the hum of anxious insects outside. When mother and younger son returned, Dwayne's eyes were red-rimmed. He announced he would postpone the sale, give Marianne a season to decide what she needed. Franklin exhaled, something tight uncoiling in his shoulders. But Olivia felt victory could be as treacherous as defeat because deferred decisions often fermented into deadlier brews. Still, supper that night tasted hopeful. They ate black-eyed peas from a slow cooker that had survived 2 foreclosures, laughing when the twins video called to tease their father's ragged haircut. Marianne produced a jar of strawberry preserves from her grocery sack, emergency sweetness, she said, and spooned it over biscuits until syrup dripped down everyone's wrists. Laughter grew louder, sorrow lighter, and for a fleeting hour the house felt like the cradle of a story rewriting itself. But as dishes clinked into the sink, Olivia's phone chimed with an email notification from the county assessor's office. Subject line, proposed zoning change. She skimmed enough to see that the gravel lane was slated to be widened into a feeder road for a new highway bypass. The plan would seize portions of neighboring lots, maybe even slice through the very garden Marianne envisioned. Olivia slid the phone into her pocket, heart stuttering. She glanced around the kitchen at faces momentarily unburdened. The news nested in her chest like a sparrow of dread. Flapping wings against her ribs, she hadn't imagined another threat could rise so quickly, yet here it was. Proof that autonomy was forever negotiable, security always borrowed. Outside, night gathered like a dark tide. In the porch, lights halo, seedling trays waited, fragile green shoots pushing against the rim. Olivia brushed a leaf with her thumb. How many storms could a tender stem survive before it snapped? And with the family having felt the first murmurs of reconciliation, weather the fresh quake of land surveys and eminent domain, she closed her eyes, hearing the highway in the distance, an ocean of engines she had hardly noticed before, wondering whether the sound would one day drown cicadas, laughter, even apologies. The future pressed forward, its boots already crunching gravel. And although no one else yet sensed the approaching weight, Olivia did, and the knowledge tasted of iron and falling rain. Olivia lay awake long after everyone else collapsed in exhausted, biscuit-heavy sleep. The county email pulsed on her phone like a lighthouse she dreaded to face, its subject line glowing each time the screen dimmed and relit. Midnight wind rattled the half-hung gutter. She wondered whether it was only wind or the house itself groaning a warning. Franklin's breathing beside her was deep, trusting, unaware. She had planned to tell him tonight, genuinely had, but the easy laughter at dinner, the thawing warmth between brothers, had felt too fragile to expose to cold bureaucracy. At 5, the rooster 3 lots over crowed, and guilt crowed with it. Olivia slid from bed, toes meeting the cool of unfinished floorboards, and padded to the porch where Marianne already sat in flannel and hope, shelling pecans into a dented pie tin. "Can't sleep when the dark's louder than dreams, Cadazeus," the older woman said, not looking up. Olivia eased beside her, feeling the porch paint rough beneath her palms. For a breath she watched cracked shells scatter like tiny boats on brown water. Then words spilled. She told Marianne everything. The bypass, the eminent domain clause, the possibility that the strip of land where tomato seedlings would go might soon belong to asphalt and diesel fumes. Marianne's fingers stilled. A pecan half slipped, rolled across the boards and fell through a knothole. For a heartbeat, Olivia feared fury, another deed, another decision stolen. But Marianne only closed her eyes, inhaling until her shoulders rose like slow tide. "Highways don't grow food," she murmured, "and people can fight surveys harder than weeds if they stand together." Her voice carried a steely threat Olivia hadn't heard before, as though the railroad widow still remembered the echo of train whistles and what it meant to push iron through. Resistance. She reached over, touched Olivia's wrist. "Tell Franklin at breakfast. Secrets spread rot quicker than mold." The wisdom stung because it was true. Olivia hugged herself, nodding, and promised. From somewhere beyond the pecan trees, a dump truck backfired, the sound ricocheting like distant artillery. The day was already flexing its muscles. They woke Franklin with coffee and a map Marianne had found online during the pre-dawn hours. Lines crisscrossed the grid, yellow for proposed routes, red for probable acquisition. Their parcel sat square in a red box. Franklin blinked twice, rubbed the sleep from his eyes, then the color drained. "We just got here," he whispered, as though someone could hear his protest in reverse time. Olivia explained the county council meeting scheduled for Friday, 4 days away, where zoning would be open for public comment. Franklin's first instinct was despair, but desperation quickly warmed into strategy. He pulled legal pads from the unpacked office box and began drafting bullet points. Years as an accountant had tempered him to swing calmly through panic toward problem solving, and Olivia found herself breathing easier as his pen scratched arguments about heritage districts, endangered pecan groves, and alternative engineering options. By 10, they had a plan: gather signatures, rally neighbors, and present united resistance. The fragility Olivia had feared was replaced almost miraculously by purpose. She realized that adversity, recurrent though it was, hammered loose the rust between them and forged a sharper edge of partnership. Outside, sun crept across paint cans, old worries hid in its glare. Yet, as they divided streets to canvas, Olivia could not ignore a flicker of dread. Dwayne would return to work in Nashville tomorrow, and convincing him to fight for a house that was never his might proved harder than battling any county board. Dwayne arrived that afternoon in a mood Olivia could not immediately read. His twins streamed from the SUV, clutching gaming consoles and duffel bags, told to visit Grandma's new garden while their father talked business. Marianne's face brightened nevertheless. Her hands went immediately to the boys' shoulders, steering them toward a patch of earth freshly cleared of crabgrass. Watching her, Olivia thought about soil as a vocabulary, something Marianne spoke fluently, something Dwayne had never quite learned. Inside, Franklin rolled out the map. Dwayne listened, shifting from foot to foot, jaw tightening more with every highlighted parcel. "I get it," he said at last, "but I just postponed the Arkansas sale. My budget is blood thin." Lawyers cost money. Olivia realized he was doing arithmetic in his head. Distance to Nashville, hours lost, and now the price of resistance. Franklin tried to argue that letters, petitions, and neighbor solidarity might outweigh legal fees, yet Dwayne's expression darkened under unspoken weight. Responsibility for both his mother's comfort and his own promotion, which was already demanding. Weekend orientation sessions. Marianne stepped in. If land goes, food goes. If food goes, memories starve. The sentence seemed simple, almost pastoral, but Dwayne flinched as though struck. He looked at his mother, knees dusty from kneeling, fingertips still soil-smudged. Something unfastened behind his eyes, a latch giving way. He said nothing at first, then nodded once. Slow, reluctant, but real. "I'll call my supervisor," he muttered. "Take personal days." Momentum gathered like storm clouds, but storms never form without friction. By evening, they had canvassed half the lane. Some neighbors signed easily. Retired farmers with acres of collards who feared fumes settling on leaves. A single mother whose toddler slept better without traffic roar. Others scoffed, swayed by rumors of property value spikes once off-ramps appeared. A realtor waved them off, citing economic growth. At dusk, Olivia stood at the last porch, a garland of plastic pumpkins framing the doorway. A gray-haired teacher read the petition silently, then told Olivia that bypasses had eaten her childhood neighborhood outside Tupelo. She signed with a flourish, tears bright and angry. Returning home, Olivia's optimism dimmed. They had 35 signatures, respectable but perhaps insufficient against bulldozers and budget forecasts. In the kitchen, pots simmered with gumbo, Marianne's hands moving as though stirring could summon courage. Franklin spread maps across the table, Dwayne paced, fielding calls from Nashville and clipped tones that hinted at repercussions. The twins, overhearing fragments, asked if the government could just steal houses. No one had a clean answer. That night, Olivia wandered to the backyard alone. The fig tree they had pruned together with Dwayne 2 days prior stood ghost-pale in moonlight, branches bandaged with gauze tape. She recalled Marianne's earlier words, "Highways don't grow food," and pressed her palm to the trunk's rough bark. The tree felt cool, indifferent, but alive. Above it, constellations burned holes in the darkness. Olivia whispered a promise to the tree, the house herself, that she would not surrender acreage without fight. Beneath her vow lurked the question of cost, but under those stars she decided even cost could be confronted tomorrow. Wednesday dawned to sirens in the distance, an unrelated accident on the state road, yet it set nerves humming. Franklin left early to photocopy petitions at the Clarksdale Library while Olivia drafted a speech, every paragraph sharpened like fence staples. Marianne, in printed dress and sun hat, ventured door to door with her seed packets as conversation starters, translating horticulture into activism. You plant a seed today so your grandchild can taste it tomorrow. Sign here if you agree. She returned near noon, flushed but triumphant, 20 more names on her clipboard. Dwayne's supervisor left 6 voicemails in 2 hours. The promotion was jeopardized by his unavailability during rollout. Stress etched his face. Franklin caught him shredding a nail with his teeth, something he only did when cornered. Over barbecue sandwiches, Dwayne exploded, "I'm bleeding for a fight that isn't mine." Silence slammed the table. Marianne set her cup down slowly. "You're right," she said. "I made decisions alone. Now consequences fall on you. I won't see you lose your future." She reached for Olivia's petition, intent on removing her son's signature, but Olivia's hand shot out, stopping her. "Choice matters more than blame," Olivia said. Her pulse throbbed behind her temples, yet she met Dwayne's eyes. "If you stay, stay because you choose us. If you go back to Nashville, we will fight anyway." The room vibrated with charged stillness. Dwayne's gaze flickered to Franklin, who nodded, brotherly solidarity stronger than old rivalries. Something shifted. Dwayne breathed out, shoulders dropping. "I'll stay," he whispered. "But if my promotion collapses, this kitchen better smell like gratitude for a decade." Laughter cracked the tension, brief, needed. Thursday afternoon, a county pickup trundled down the lane, 2 surveyors in neon vests planting orange stakes. Children gathered like startled birds, following at cautious distance. Olivia hurried out, clipboard in hand, demanding explanation. The younger surveyor mumbled that preliminary marking happened before hearings as standard procedure. His partner, older and unconcerned, hammered another stake inches from Marianne's seedling tray. Marianne knelt, shielding the tender green with her body. Franklin called the sheriff, learned it was legal, hung up, cursing under his breath. Dwayne suggested video documentation. Olivia filmed. Voice steady, though her hands shook. The scene was uploaded to social media by sundown, and comments multiplied. Neighbors, high school activists, even a blues musician offering a benefit concert. That night, lightning stitched the horizon, mirroring electric hope inside Olivia despite fear's rooting. They rehearsed speeches in the living room, Dwayne arguing economic ripple effects, Franklin citing environmental assessments, Olivia closing with the personal history woven into every floorboard. Marianne would finish, voice soft but iron-laced, reminding officials that progress measured only in miles of concrete might one day starve the very people it claimed to serve. At 2 a.m, Olivia woke to quick knocks, urgent, panicked. She rushed to the door to find the elderly teacher who had signed 2 days ago, slippers soaked from dew. "They published a revised map," she whispered, thrusting a damp printout. Under flashing streetlights, Olivia saw a new red swath. The bypass now sliced deeper, amputating half of their lot and burrowing straight through the fig tree. The meeting was less than 24 hours away. Inside, Olivia spread the paper on the kitchen table. Franklin's breath hitched. Dwayne cursed low. Marianne closed her eyes, whispering a prayer that sounded like a train brake screeching on rusted rails. The younger generation of twigs in the fig tree had just been spared, Olivia thought, and now bureaucrats aimed to sever the trunk. The fight became not only about land, but about something more stubborn, a refusal to vanish. They sat in a ring around the table, shadows pooling as the single bulb swung in the storm's draft. Thunder rumbled, a deep drumbeat. Olivia felt weary muscle fibers plead for sleep, yet adrenaline rode over fatigue. She tapped the map, outlining new arguments, fresh statistics, fiercer language. Each time she paused, Marianne added a line about community gardens, Franklin about tax variance, Dwayne about commuter noise. Words layered like protective coats of paint until sunrise seeped under the curtains, finding them still there. Paper coffee cups littering the tabletop. hope raw but breathing. Outside, the bypass stakes glowed orange against bruised dawn, mute threats waiting. Inside, a different kind of stake was planted, resolution, tall and unbending. Whether it would root or snap in the hearing's gale, none could know. Yet, as Olivia watched the sky turn copper, she realized something essential. The house was no longer merely shelter. It had become forge. Whatever emerged from Friday's meeting, victory, compromise, or loss, they would cross that threshold changed, tempered by heat no surveyor could measure. The rooster crowed again, hoarse from overuse, but its call sounded newly defiant, as if it too understood that dawn sometimes needs heralding twice when the stakes are high. Franklin squeezed Olivia's hand. Dwayne leaned back, eyes ringed with fatigue. Marianne stood, joints crackling, and began brewing chicory coffee. Steam curled upward, carrying a scent that belonged wholly to this patch of kitchen, this borrowed day, this found-again family, fragile yet ferocious in its claim to remain. Friday's sunrise felt counterfeit, too bright for a day primed to bruise. Olivia pinched her forearm while the kettle hissed, proving she hadn't slept into some lighter dream. Steam unfurled across the kitchen like a slow exhalation, carrying chicory notes and the dull metallic tang of anxiety. Marianne sliced cornbread into thick wedges, hands sure, despite the tremor humming in her wrists. Every few minutes she checked the wall clock, as if the minute hand were a fuse she couldn't snuff. Franklin, already in pressed shirt and tie, shuffled papers into tidy stacks. Each sheet bore highlighted phrases: heritage corridor, environmental runoff, loss of community identity. Ammunition he hoped would punch through bureaucratic armor. Dwayne, still in jeans and a wrinkled polo, scrolled his phone for traffic updates, biting the inside of his cheek. The twins whispered conspiratorially near the door, slipping handmade signs into a canvas tote. "Stop imminent demise," one read. "Another road, another loss," warned the other. Olivia had dressed twice. First in a floral blouse that felt conciliatory, then in a charcoal gray blazer that felt like thick skin. She settled on the blazer. A single hairpin refused to stay, so a strand kept falling, reminding her that readiness, like faith, is never airtight. She loaded petitions into a cardboard tube, kissed the edge of the cornbread for luck, and herded everyone outside. The Clarksdale morning smelled of dew-soaked hay and diesel from distant tractors. The highway's hush loomed like a predator just out of sight. They squeezed into Franklin's pickup, clipboard corners poking ribs, a thermos leaking heat onto the floor mat. Halfway down Cedar Lane, they saw orange survey stakes glinting under dawn's angle, plastic tops winking as though mocking the attempt to undo them. Marianne looked away, mumbling something about blinders on mules. Olivia squeezed her shoulder, one brief pulse of shared dread, then fixed eyes on the road. Downtown, the county courthouse rose squat and stony, 3 flagpoles spearing the sky. Protesters already clustered by the steps, 10, maybe 15 at first glance. But more cars trickled in, elderly farmers clutching canes, guitarists slinging beat-up cases, mothers balancing toddlers and picket signs. A saxophonist warmed up on the curb, blue notes curling into gold as sun climbed. The courthouse clock struck 8, and the swell of bodies echoed its final toll. Olivia counted near 60 faces. Not a revolution, but maybe enough to make a clerk's hand tremble. Franklin parked. Dwayne hoisted the petition tube like a baton. Cameras, local news, a college media club, panned across homemade slogans. Olivia felt lenses prick her skin, magnifying sweat pearls along her hairline. She inhaled. Sawdust, weed killer from courthouse shrubbery, and something electric, anticipation sparking against fear. A deputy unlocked double doors at 8:30. Fluorescent hallways swallowed them, dampening protest chants. Inside the commission chamber, rows of folding chairs lined a parquet floor polished thin by decades of shoes and decisions. A banner behind the dais declared, "Serving the future together." Olivia muttered that the word "together" did heavy lifting. Franklin squeezed her hand, then joined the queue for speaker sign-ups. They sat 4th row. Marianne's cornflower dress stood out among suit jackets. The twins occupied seats on either side of her, protective. Dwayne drummed fingers on his thigh until Olivia covered them. Their pulse matched hers. A door opened behind the dais, and the 5 commissioners filed in, gavel tapping wood, perfunctory smiles. Chairman Lawson, gray mustache trimmed sharp as a border, laid out ground rules with the crispness of a conductor cueing strings. 5 minutes per speaker, no applause, decorum please. His eyes skimmed the crowd and snagged on the camera lenses. He straightened, aware of an audience beyond familiar faces. First came the civil engineer's slideshow, a parade of traffic projections, colorful graphs climbing like eager weeds. He praised growth corridors and logistics efficiencies, his laser pointer dotting proposed lanes with clinical detachment. Olivia watched numbers replace trees before her eyes. Each vehicle per hour seemed to crush a seedling under statistical wheels. When he finished, a realtor extolled property value surges. An investment consultant spoke of job creation. Applause was forbidden, but polite nods rippled from those who smelled profit. Then Chairman Lawson called Franklin Ellis. Franklin rose, nerves disguised beneath steady shoulders. He placed the petition tube on the podium, unscrewed the cap, and let signatures spill like banner cloth. Paper rustled across the floor, a living thing unrolling down the aisle until a deputy stepped forward to gather it. Photographers leaned in. Franklin cleared his throat, voice quavering only at first. He spoke of pecan groves older than county charters, of the corridor's fragile aquifer, of children sleeping through quiet nights that asphalt would steal. He quoted tax data, citing how bypasses in neighboring counties had drained local diners when travelers sped past. He finished by pointing at a framed county motto, rooted in heritage growing together, and asked whether roots remained roots if plowed for convenience. Polite silence followed, per rules, yet Olivia recognized teetering balance. She stood next. Her blazer suddenly felt too hot, but she imagined cool well water and began. She described learning to garden from Mary Ann, coal dust in her nails the day she and Franklin re-roofed the Arkansas barn, the first tomato they planned to harvest from Clarksdale soil. She talked about loss measured not in acres but in trust, how deeds can be legal yet still slash bonds. Halfway through, her voice cracked. Instead of retreat, she let the tremor speak for her because trembling names what matters. Cameras zoomed. Commissioner Doyle, youngest on the panel, looked down, jaw working. Several neighbors followed. School teachers, sharecroppers, a blues musician who strummed one minor chord before being reminded of decorum. Each added brush strokes, fears of asthma from diesel plumes, stories of porch swings now facing sound walls in other towns. Testimony stacked like bricks forming a barricade. Olivia felt momentum, the intangible physics of voices aligning. But inside that rising current, she sensed undertow. Chairman Lawson rarely looked up from his notepad, pen flicking in gestures she mistrusted. After an hour, the sign-up sheet emptied. The chairman folded his notes, thanked attendees, and announced a 10-minute recess before deliberations. Deputies escorted commissioners through a side door. The chamber erupted, forbidden applause erupting anyway, relief mingling with nerves. The saxophonist slipped inside, riffing a blues lick until security hustled him out. Franklin hugged Olivia, breath warm against her temple. "We made them listen," he whispered, but she noticed his hands trembling now that the podium no longer required poise. She kissed the knuckles. Silent promise. Dwayne returned from the hallway, phone pressed to ear, his supervisor again. Olivia watched tension chisel his posture. He hung up, forehead creased. "They're cutting the training cohort to 5, he said quietly. "My slot's dangling." Marianne reached for him, but he stepped back, pacing. Olivia understood. The fight threatened more than land. It pinched livelihoods. As she opened her mouth to reassure him, a deputy announced the board's return. Dwayne swallowed, cheeks blotched, and took his seat. Chairman Lawson rapped the gavel, voice measured. "We appreciate the passion." He dabbed his mustache with a handkerchief, nerves masquerading as routine. "We've considered testimony and reviewed revised proposals from the Department of Transportation." Olivia frowned. Revised? None had been posted. Lawson ventilated legal jargon, explaining how budgets tightened, federal grants dangled, timelines compressed. Even Commissioners Doyle and Sandoval, who'd seemed moved earlier, now wore guarded expressions. Then Lawson unveiled a new route map, larger than the one pinned outside. Aides rolled it across an easel. Green lines, blue lines, and in thick red, a boulder bypass cut, wider than before but curving away from the Ellis property. Gasps fluttered. Olivia's heart stuttered. Relief? Fear? Her garden remained intact, yet neighboring parcels now lay under crimson. Lawson framed it as compromise. Less disruption to Clarksdale tax base, new on-ramp nearer industrial park, federal funds guaranteed if accepted within 30 days. He recommended preliminary approval, subject to environmental review, to keep momentum. Murmurs filled the chamber, some hopeful, others angry. Olivia's gaze shot to Marianne, whose eyes clouded with conflict, to Franklin, jaw tight, to Dwayne, whose shoulders eased a fraction as if fate returned half of his promotion. The commission opened floor for brief rebuttals, 2 minutes each. At least 10 hands lifted. Olivia's rose last, uncertain what to say when relocation of pain merely shifts its scream. A neighboring farmer, Miss Whitaker, limped to the mic. The new line sliced through her sorghum fields, her voice shook with fury disguised as calm. She reminded commissioners that moving a knife from one limb to another still spilled blood. A disabled veteran testified next, his modular home directly in the red swath. His monotone cut deeper than shouting. Commissioners shifted uneasily. Olivia realized compromise could fracture alliances. The board, betting neighbor against neighbor. Her turn arrived. She stepped forward, no speech prepared for a map she'd never seen. Heat prickled her scalp. Floodlights singed pupils. "Today you asked us to trade one wound for another," she began. She spoke of solidarity forged under porch rafters at midnight, of chains stronger than convenience. "If you carve my neighbor's fields, you carve my garden too," she said. She asked what heritage meant if defined by a moving target of exemptions, argued that trust erodes when promises shift like summer storms. She ended by pointing to the veteran seated in front row. "His porch matters as much as mine. Don't redraw respect." Applause broke decorum again. Deputies didn't bother silencing it. Chairman Lawson conferred with staff, lips thumbnail thin. Commissioner Doyle cleared his throat, requesting a motion to table approval until independent survey analyses included equitable impact metrics. Sandoval seconded. Whispers rippled across the dais, political calculus rebalancing. Lawson hesitated, eyeing the audience. Cameras zoomed. Then he called for vote. 3 hands raised, Doyle, Sandoval, and Ms. Nguyen, who had sat silent all morning. 2 opposed, Lawson and Commissioner Hart. Motion carried. The chamber erupted, some cheers, some groans. Lawson slammed gavel, declared session adjourned until further notice, and stalked off, mustache bristling. Momentum melted into confusion. Table didn't mean triumph. It meant time bought, not victory sealed. Yet breaths sagged in collective relief, an artery temporarily clamped. Olivia hugged Franklin, tears surprising her. Dwayne turned away, shoulders heaving once, then faced them with a grin taut as cello strings. Marianne stood still, gaze on the map where red still licked edges of farmland. Olivia followed her stare, knew the fight had grown wider, stakes higher. But they had carved a crack in the official monolith, a fissure where sunlight could wedge. Outside, protesters whooped. The saxophonist launched into "When the Saints Go Marching In," and for a moment, courthouse steps felt like church revival. Reporters thrust microphones toward Olivia. She answered cautiously, emphasizing collective effort. Franklin cited statistics. Dwayne spoke about community resilience, voice gaining steadiness. Marianne said little, but her eyes shone fierce. Yet as they walked to the truck, tired but buoyant, a black sedan idled at the curb. Inside, Chairman Lawson sat with a man in a charcoal suit who didn't match any commissioner. His window cracked. Cigar smoke coiled out, acrid. Their gazes met Olivia's group. Franklin tightened grip on petitions. The sedan rolled away, tailpipe coughing a dark plume. Olivia watched until it vanished. Victory always invites counter moves. Back at the house, sunset stitched magenta across sky. They dropped into mismatched chairs on the porch, silent except for cicadas. Dwayne texted his supervisor, "Family emergency extends back Monday." No response came, but he slipped phone into pocket, exhaling. Marianne rose, fetched seed packets, and pressed one into Olivia's palm, okra seeds warm by her body heat. "Tomorrow we plant," she said. Olivia nodded, though fatigue threatened collapse. Planting felt more urgent now. Proof of stake, a root sunk before lines on a map could rewrite destiny. Clouds rolled west, lightning flickering like camera flashes. Franklin fetched a lantern, its glow softening the porch into an island. They talked quietly about next steps, hiring independent assessors, coordinating with farmers, drafting press releases. Yet eventually, even strategists tire. Conversation drifted. Marianne told a story of her husband's first derailment repair upstate, how he'd worked 48 hours straight to keep freight moving before Christmas. Rails and roads, she mused, both promise arrival. But they forget the folks already arrived. That line fell over them like a quilt. Olivia's eyelids fluttered. She pictured okra seedlings, tiny spears brave against clay, and wondered if roots sensed nearby asphalt the way animals sensed quakes. But as a breeze lifted sweat-damp hair from her neck, she also felt something wild, possibility stronger than dread. The highway had cleared its throat, but they had answered with voice. A choir of scarecrow farmers and sax-playing dreamers, a widow, an accountant, 2 teen boys, and a woman who'd learned to hold a microphone steady even while her heart raced. In that hush before bedtime, the porch became semaphore. Franklin's sigh, Marianne humming low, Dwayne tapping a hammer to reseat a loose rail, each sound spelling resilience. Olivia stared at the gravel lane, seeing not dust, but lines of people walking toward tomorrow's fight. The bypass might still come. Pain might still redraw boundaries, but tonight she felt the earth pulse under her bare feet, steady, forgiving, waiting to see who would keep planting when surveys circled like vultures overhead. They slept as though drugged, yet dawn broke restless. Olivia woke to the twins arguing about breakfast cereal, the mundane clatter oddly soothing. She brewed a second pot of coffee. Thunder muttered far off, but rain held back. Sky bruised lavender. The respite felt temporary, like the table motion, but enough for planting. Tools emerged. A bent shovel, donated trowels, gloves missing fingertips. Marianne wore a straw hat moths had chewed, determination fresh as spring. Franklin marked rows with twine. Dwayne hauled compost from a neighbor's shed. The twins staked handmade signage, future okra, tomato frontier. Olivia knelt, palms pressing moist loam, feeling heartbeats slow to earth's tempo. Seed by seed they buried intention, promises of pods and vines, proof of life signatures in soil. With each handful, Marianne whispered the name of someone whose porch stood in red ink on the map. Miss. Whitaker, the veteran, the single mother, inviting their stories to root here too. Mid-morning, a white pickup rattled up. Dust curling. Commissioner Doyle stepped out, jacket off, sleeves rolled. Olivia's pulse spiked. Ally or Sentinel? He carried a flattened box of seedlings, like basil, peppers, heirloom tomatoes, bought from his uncle's nursery, he said. Off the record, Doyle added, glancing toward the highway, but on the side of common sense. He knelt beside Marianne and pressed a basil start into her hands. Cameras nowhere in sight, gesture uncalculated. Marianne's eyes watered. Olivia suddenly grasped how pivot points aren't always gavels, sometimes they're seedlings. Joy cracked wide, but fear seeped through. Doyle reported rumblings. Lawson lobbying state officials, developers pressing for expedited hearings. A compromise map might shrink, swell, or snap back. Your pause could be days or weeks, Doyle warned. Dwayne muttered, or minutes. The commissioner shrugged, root ball crumbling between fingers. Grow quick, he said, half joking, rising to leave. As his truck vanished, a county utility van approached, two workers stepping out to inspect a telephone pole on the property line. They cited routine maintenance. Olivia felt a chill. Routine. The bureaucrat's shield. She watched them tag the pole with neon tape, future cable route perhaps, and imagined bright plastic creeping across fields like fungus. By afternoon, newspapers hit stands. County bypass plan stalled by public outcry. A photo captured Olivia mid-speech, eyes fierce, hair escaping pin. Another showed Franklin unfurling petitions. Social media buzzed. An online petition mirrored the paper one and skyrocketed past 3,000 signatures. Good news, but algorithms seldom feed results without backlash. Comments section birthed trolls ridiculing NIMBY Luddites. A radio pundit accused them of hamstringing growth. Hate mail trickled through the website Dwayne built overnight for the coalition. Marianne read a message calling her dirt hugger grandma and laughed, but Olivia saw sadness behind mirth. Evening brought a visitor they did not expect. Miss Whitaker arrived in her battered truck, walked straight to the fig tree, and wrapped twine around its trunk in a rough bow. Luck ribbon, she explained, voice husky. She produced a jar of sorghum syrup for Marianne. In exchange, she accepted 2 basil starts. Trade felt ceremonial, older than bypasses, older than deeds. After Ms. Whitaker left, Dwayne's phone chimed. An email from his supervisor. Olivia read unease on his brow before he spoke. The promotion was gone, position filled, a final training date offered, take it or lose job entirely. He swallowed hard. Franklin cursed softly. Marianne said nothing but took her son's hand, squeezing until knuckles whitened. Olivia's heart fractured along the same hairline crack, but anger sparked too, at a world where defending a porch could cost a paycheck. Night crept, but no one retreated indoors. They sat under a bulb strung from the eave, moths orbiting its glow. Dwayne announced he would accept demotion if necessary. He'd apply elsewhere, maybe local, because lines on a map should not dictate where his kids learned courage. Olivia felt tears but let them fall. Salt water sometimes nourishes deeper than rain. Thunderheads massed, silhouetted by occasional lightning as if the sky rehearsed war drums. Franklin fetched tarps to shield the newborn garden. Marianne directed anchors, voice crisp. The twins hurried to stake corners. Olivia realized that every crisis taught new choreography. Movements timed to unforeseen crescendos. She covered seedlings with overturned buckets, tapping each one like tucking children to sleep. As rain finally arrived, soft at first, then driven, she stood under the porch roof, water veiling the world in silver threads. The fig tree swayed, ribbon fluttering like a flag refusing surrender. Olivia shut her eyes, listening. Drops drummed on corrugated tin, thunder rumbled deeper, but beneath the cacophony the soil made quieter songs, gulps of thirst being quenched, seeds winking awake. She understood then that climax wasn't a single bang in a courthouse. It was a series of braveries. Waking at dawn to face new lines, choosing garden gloves over resignation, sacrificing promotions so roots might grip. And tomorrow dawn would likely bring revised maps, sharper stakes, deeper losses. Yet tonight rain baptized their fragile claim, and that mattered. Inside, Dwayne stirred stew while Marianne heated cornbread slices. Franklin updated the coalition site, a blog post titled, "Pause is not peace, but it's a start." Olivia added a photo of basil seedlings under plastic domes, captioning it, "Germination begins in darkness." She hit publish, heart thumping. As they gathered bowls and spoons, Olivia looked around the humble kitchen, floorboards still warped from last week's storm, paint cans cluttered corners, but laughter rippled, soft yes, exhausted yes, but laughter all the same. The bypass fight had not ended, perhaps it never would completely. Yet they were not the same family that had walked into the courthouse that morning, uncertain whether their voices merited echo. They were louder now, even in weariness, and that resonance would follow them, rain or shine, into whatever dawn required next. Lightning flashed one last brilliant sheet across the window pane, illuminating the seed packets on the sill. Thunder answered, rolling long. Less threat than promise. The sky keeping tempo with a land that refused to lie silent beneath easy asphalt. Olivia exhaled, feeling the storm's weight shift from dread to daring. The hour of Gravel's decision still loomed, but for tonight, the soil kept singing beneath the rain and every note sounded oddly like hope. Monday broke with a sky scrubbed clear by the weekend's rain, as if the world meant to start over too. Olivia awoke to the rasp of a rake. Marianne was already outside, gathering leaf litter the storm had shaken loose. The air smelled of wet cedar and the faint sweetness of blooming kudzu. When Olivia joined her, coffee steaming in mismatched mugs, the older woman spoke without looking up. County Board reconvenes Friday. Lawson's pushing for a fast vote before the governor's infrastructure summit. The sentence fell like a stone in a still pond, rippling the fragile calm they'd nursed through 2 short days. They gathered around the kitchen table, Franklin with legal pads, Dwayne refreshing emails that now pinged unemployment websites more than managerial memos, the twins half listening while pretending to do algebra. New information trickled in. The revised route still slashed through Miss Whitaker's sorghum, but spared most of the Ellis plot. The DOT had alerted landowners to appraisal surveys beginning midweek. Translation: foot and door tactics long before any official decision. Olivia saw fatigue swimming behind Franklin's eyes. Dark crescents that looked like parentheses bracketing unspoken worries. She swallowed her own exhaustion, focusing on tasks. Contacting a nonprofit legal clinic, drafting op-eds for regional papers, organizing a roadside potluck to keep momentum visible. Each assignment nested inside the next like Russian dolls, and when she laid them out, Dwayne whistled low. "This is a full-time campaign," he said. "Hope the fig tree appreciates it." The quip eased tension, but reality still bit. Dwayne's severance package was meager, the Clarksdale job market thin. Franklin's freelance work paid invoices slower than bills arrived. Marianne's pension wasn't enough to float an endless fight, yet no one voiced retreat. The twins offered to mow lawns for donations. Franklin's handshake with them felt ceremonial, a charter for a miniature militia. By afternoon, they drove to the local radio station, call-in show polite enough to entertain town drama between gospel segments and farm reports. Olivia, palm slick, told listeners how eminent domain once leveled her own grandparents' shotgun house for a parking garage that never filled. Franklin cited tax burdens of abandoned bypasses. Marianne's voice slid through the mic like warm honey. "You cannot price the sound of crickets, the shade of a pecan limb, the sweet of a brandywine tomato warmed by sun. You just can't." Callers flooded the line. Some in support, a trucker grumbling about shortcuts, a retiree offering pie for the next protest. Driving home, Olivia replayed Marianne's words in her head. They resonated because they weren't arguments. They were memories. Bureaucracy boasted numbers. Humans bled stories. Maybe, she thought, stories were the spade that could loosen asphalt plans far more effectively than any spreadsheet. That night, under dim porch light, she wrote until her hand cramped. Vignettes from neighbors, lines of blues lyrics, the taste of sorghum on cornbread crust. She edited nothing, letting raw edges stay raw. Franklin read over her shoulder, whispered, "This is the speech." She shrugged, unsure. He kissed her temple. "Trust roots?" At midnight, thunder rumbled again, not storm, but freight train, miles off. Olivia listened until the rumble faded, then slept a dreamless sleep in which gravel roads held their breath, waiting for verdict. Wednesday delivered 2 white SUVs bearing county surveyors and a private security guard who eyed the house as though it were a crime scene. The twins shouted from the porch, alerting everyone. Marianne intercepted the visitors at the property line, hoe in hand, not lifted menacingly, just resting like a cane that happened to gleam sharp. Behind her, basil and okra seedlings trembled in a breeze. The lead surveyor cited authority to measure elevations for sound barrier studies. Franklin stepped up, calm but flint-edged, requesting proof of warrant. While paperwork fluttered, miss. Whitaker's truck rumbled down the lane, followed by the blues musician's rusty van. Word had spread fast, an informal watch corps. 20 minutes of tense back and forth ended with surveyors photographing boundary posts from the public easement instead of trampling seedlings. As they retreated, Olivia caught the security guard muttering into his phone, "Yeah, it's like that." Victory tasted small but sweet until dusk when a TV news segment aired footage of the standoff, framing protesters as obstructionists jeopardizing. Regional Growth Lawson gave a sound bite about keeping progress on schedule. Olivia's stomach knotted. Public opinion, volatile and hungry, could pivot on a single headline. She powered down the TV and drafted a press release clarifying the coalition's position, fretting over every adjective. Thursday morning brought rain showers and an email from Commissioner Doyle, an unofficial heads up that Lawson had corralled 2 undecided votes. "Prepare for battle," Doyle wrote, promising unofficially to filibuster if he sensed groundswell. Olivia closed the laptop, pulse galloping. Preparation meant more than speeches now. It meant optics. Dwayne contacted a filmmaker friend who owed him a favor, arranging a live stream so the hearing couldn't quietly bury dissent. Franklin printed color photos of garden sprouts poking through mulch. Marianne baked peach cobblers. "Sugarcoats hard truths," she declared. The twins painted slogans on cardboard salvaged from appliance boxes. When supplies dwindled, neighbors arrived with markers, extension cords, lawn chairs. One man hauled a smoker on a trailer, promising free brisket for every signature. Livestock auction energy crackled along Cedar Lane. Late that night, Olivia rehearsed her speech in the half-lit kitchen. Words wobbled at first, but when she reached the line about crickets and cotton stars, her voice steadied. She pictured Lawson's mustache twitching as he weighed optics against Grant's. She pictured Doyle's subtle nod. She pictured the veteran's porch, the fig tree's ribbon, Dwayne's kids finding a world where standing ground wasn't just metaphor. Franklin entered, set 2 mugs on the table. "No, remember," he said, "even if we lose, we showed our sons what fighting fair looks like." Olivia glanced at her reflection in the dark window, hair wild, worry creasing brow, and felt paradoxical calm. "Losing isn't the opposite of winning," she said, surprising herself. "Quitting is." Together they stepped onto the porch. Rain had paused, frogs croaked from ditches. In the garden, seedlings glistened under lantern glow, leaves trembling but upright. Olivia whispered goodnight to them. Silly maybe, but necessary. Tomorrow, she promised each green shoot, "We'll give you room to grow." Friday's courthouse lawn resembled a fairground before dawn. Fold-out tables laden with cobbler, coolers of sweet tea, guitars tuning up, reporters staking tripod turrets. Sheriff deputies moved among clusters, nodding warily when offered coffee. Olivia arrived with Marianne and Dwayne in the pickup bed, its sides draped in a banner the twins had painted, "We root, we rise." Franklin followed with Ms. Whitaker and 2 farmhands whose hands looked like oak bark. Inside, every chair filled. Latecomers lined walls. A mural of Delta cotton behind the dais seemed suddenly ironic. Lawson opened proceedings, voice strained by the crowd's hum. Cameras live-streamed. Olivia felt heat bloom in her cheeks. She looked back at Dwayne, tie crooked, jaw set, and at Marianne, clutching seed packets like prayer cards. Lawson introduced a motion to adopt the optimized route, claiming balanced compromise. Applause and boos tangled until deputies scolded. Commissioner Doyle rose, requesting extended public testimony due to significant new opposition. Lawson objected. Doyle referenced state open meeting statutes. A hush fell. Legal duel on record. Lawson seated, 2 hours max. Speakers queued. Miss Whitaker detailed generational sorghum yields, comparing root depth to ancestral devotion. A high school senior cited endangered bat colonies roosting in hollow oaks slated for removal. The blues musician sang the opening verse of a field holler, then parsed its historical echo across asphalt corridors. Applause shattered decorum, but Lawson let it ride, aware cameras were rolling. Mid-session, Dwayne stepped forward. Olivia's breath caught. He hadn't planned to speak. He introduced himself as a logistics analyst who'd lost a promotion defending this land. "I've crunched numbers," he said, unfolding spreadsheets. Your projected traffic counts? Assume population growth. Clarksdale hasn't hit in 20 years. You're bulldozing based on fiction. He spoke of opportunity costs, echoing the board's own playbook. Lawson interrupted about speculative employment data, but Duane volleyed citations, voice steady as ledger lines. A murmur of respect rippled through the room. A son once peripheral, now center stage. Then Olivia took the podium, notes trembling. She didn't read them. Instead, she told a story of a widow named Marianne Ellis who carried railroad grease under her fingernails and found consolation in tomatoes. Of a daughter-in-law who mistook a deed for betrayal until soil taught her humility. Of neighbors bound by the shared heartbeat of cicadas on summer nights. She spoke of children learning that land is not an inheritance but a stewardship, and stewardship sometimes means saying no to louder engines. Her final line landed in pin-drop silence. Concrete remembers nothing. Roots remember everything, applause thundered. Cameras flashed. Lawson cleared his throat, cheeks blotched. He called for order, then for the vote. Eyes flicking to each commissioner in silent whip count. Doyle voted no to the bypass. Sandoval voted no. Nguyen hesitated, then no. Hart voted yes. All eyes turned to Lawson. He swallowed, mustache twitching, gaze darting to cameras, to cobbler-bearing widows, to schoolkids hoisting signs. The tie-break decision gleamed like a sword. He tapped the gavel once, voice flat. Motion fails. Gasps, then cheers rose like a tide no dam could hold. Marianne's hands flew to her mouth. Olivia felt Franklin's arms wrap around her, the world tilting. Duane whooped, one raw, joyful sound. Reporters swarmed. Lawson vanished through a side door. Commissioner Doyle smiled tiredly, nodding at Olivia, before deputies swept him to press briefings. Outside, the courthouse steps erupted into impromptu festival. The saxophonist led "This Little Light of Mine." Strangers clasped palms. Cobbler vanished in minutes. Ms. Whitaker poured sorghum over biscuits, tears and syrup mingling. Duane called his sons, voice cracking as he said, "We did it, bud." "Yeah, we did," Franklin texted the twins. They were live-streaming celebrations to their classmates, internet ablaze with emojis of sprouts and fists. Olivia stepped away, breath catching. In the parking lot, she spotted the black sedan, doors shut, engine idling. The man in the charcoal suit watched the jubilant mob through tinted glass. Their eyes met. He flicked ash from a cigarette, lifted 2 fingers to his brow in ambiguous salute, then pulled away. Threat, acknowledgement, or both. Unclear. Olivia filed it in memory. Fights rarely stay buried forever. Back on Cedar Lane that evening, they found neighbors had decorated the fig tree with ribbons of every color, fluttering like a gospel choir in wind. The twins strung fairy lights along the porch. Duane grilled ribs. Franklin uncorked the last bottle of Duane's promotion celebration wine, repurposed for something sweeter. When dusk pooled violet across the newly safe fields, Marianne rose, holding a jar of garden soil. She sprinkled a pinch at the fig tree's roots, then at basil, okra, tomatoes. "Promised," she whispered. Olivia joined her, palm resting on bark warm from daylight. Cicadas began their nightly hymn, louder than before, or perhaps now simply heard. Later, sitting alone on the porch swing, Olivia let the day replay. The hush before Lawson's vote, the roar after, the sedan's retreat. She traced the bruise on her palm where petition rolls had dug in, proof that paper can cut skin when gripped with enough hope. Franklin joined her, pressing shoulder to shoulder, no words needed. She gazed at the gravel lane, still intact, still theirs. In twilight, she imagined tiny roots beneath its edge, inching outward, testing boundaries. Asphalt might come again someday, wearing another name, but tonight roots were winning. And she understood the story's quiet truth. Victories worth keeping are less about halting bulldozers than about learning together to stand firm, family, neighbors, strangers who become kin under protest tents, all planting, replanting, daring to believe the ground will answer in green. A shooting star raked the sky. Olivia made no wish. She felt it already granted. Marianne hummed a railroad lullaby. Dwayne's laughter drifted from the grill. The twins chased fireflies along fence posts. Franklin murmured, "Home," and Olivia replied, "Yes." One word vast enough to hold every seed, every scar, every mile of paved and unpaved road that had led them here. The night deepened, cradling house and garden alike, and for the first time since cinnamon fried chicken signaled upheaval weeks ago, silence sounded not like dread but like belonging. A hush where roots could speak, telling stories the stars leaned down to hear.